I've got a 2013 BMW 328xi, so this is the all-wheel drive car. I'm doing timing chains on this one. It's got the N20 engine. There are a lot of videos showing how to do the timing chain job, but there's nothing showing you how to do it when you've got the all-wheel drive car. It's almost exactly the same, other than there are differences with how you do the front end to take apart the oil pan, and this video is going to focus on that. So I'm only going to show how to do that portion of it, and then I recommend you watching any of the videos that are already out there on how to do the rest. For the additional information on how to do this job, I recommend you following along with the FCP Euro video, just because everything that I'm referencing and the timestamps and all of that, and where I think you're at, I'm following those FCP Euro videos, so I recommend you just watch those. So the first thing that you need to know is you're going to order your timing chain kit, but there's one specifically for the all-wheel drive car. And it's almost exactly the same as the other kit, so you're going to have everything you see here in both kits. The all-wheel drive car kit is going to have these differences. You're going to have your metal oil pan gasket. You're going to have these seals for your front differential, and I'll show how to install that. I'll show how to do everything with that. And then it also has the bolts for the front CV axles. These are not reusable. You do need to replace these. Other than that, everything in here, they put in both kits. There are no differences. So along with this kit that you need to buy, this is the first thing you need. The second thing you need is an oil change kit. You're going to need some oil and an oil filter. The third thing is you're going to need gear oil. This is unique to the all-wheel drive, obviously. You're going to want to get 2 of these, and they're a little bit expensive, but it's BMW, it is what it is. And then you got to buy this as a 4th item. This is just the timing kit for the N20, and I'll figure out the part number and all that so you have it. It's really easy to find though, like this is not a difficult thing to track down. I've got my E-Torx. This is not specific to this job, obviously, it's common tools. And then you're definitely going to need some regular Torx. And then along with basic sockets and basic hand tools. I almost forgot to mention, you are going to need a tool like this or something similar, basically to support the engine. And this is the case for the all-wheel drive version and the non-all-wheel drive. So literally all of the N20 engines are going to need this. I'm working on the video editing. I realized I forgot to mention something. See this thing right here, this toe attachment? This actually bolts into the head of the engine, and then you could just lift it like that with the engine support bar. One thing that's really dumb, this toe attachment, it's not the one that comes with your car. So the one that you find in your trunk is not going to fit the head. You have to buy this part right here. It's kind of dumb, but it is what it is. And it's going to thread in basically like that. See that? Yeah, it's kind of a tight fit, but yeah, kind of dumb, but that's what you got to do. First thing you want to do is go ahead and disconnect your battery. It's located in the trunk. It's pretty simple on this car. You just, rotate that, pull this out of the way. I've already done it. And then you got your battery right there. You can see I stuck that rag in the way so it doesn't try to connect itself. I'm starting with the driver's side. Obviously, you just take off your tire, very simple. Let's try this again. I went ahead and I lowered this and I loosened everything with my breaker bar. This is a 17 millimeter for anyone who wants to know. A basic overview of this job is all we're trying to do below here is take out the CV axle on both sides and then take off the differential so that we can pull the oil pan. It's really not too hard of a process. Removing the CV axle is pretty simple. You can see we got that main large bolt for the CV axle. This is a 17 millimeter Allen is what mine is. I just stuck a screwdriver in there to hold it, and that worked very well. We've got the nut for the tie rod end right there. We've got another nut for the lower control arm, I guess, for right there. And then the second lower control arm. I mean, I don't even know if that's what it's called for BMW, but effectively the two lower control arms. So it's, you know, one nut, two nut, three nuts. And then we got the bolt there. And then after that, we should be able to just pop the CV axle out. We'll find out. One thing to keep in mind with these, see that? It's got like an O-ring. It's got a spring attached. And it sits like that. And look at that. The spring, see how the smaller part is actually facing downward. And then the larger part of the spring is facing up. See that? And that is very important. You cannot mix that up. I'm doing the 3 bolts for the 2 lower control arms and then the tie rod end. Mine are both 21 for everything. They're all 21s. All of my nuts are spinning with the stud, which is kind of annoying, but it's manageable. You can actually get a T40 and you can hold it with that. And then you get a 21 wrench to rotate the nut, and it works because the stud actually has an insert where you can stick the T40 in. So that's the only way I guess there's other ways, but that's the easiest way to resolve this situation. Don't use a long one. This sucks. Get a short T40. The CV axle is ready to remove. This part was actually a really big struggle. Getting this thing to just get out of this was really hard. You're really going to struggle with that. It was a lot easier on this when I actually just loosened that nut. It allowed this thing to just go down like that, and so I really think that's how you want to do it. But at this point, my CV axle is ready to pull. I just need to pop it off right there. It's a little bit blurry. Let's focus in. Yep, I just need to pop it off right there. And you can see my boot's all torn up. So this would be a great time for me to replace that boot or replace the whole CV axle. I was able to remove the CV axle. It was actually a really big struggle. You're really going to struggle with this one. You can see there's really not a lot of room on here. My CV axle is already shot, so I need to replace mine anyways. I wasn't careful and I actually damaged it. You see that? The way I did this was I got this really long punch. See how it's like flat right there? I hit it like this, you know, like that, and I just tapped it with a hammer. And then I wasn't careful and I hit it right there. It's really easy to crack. I'm gonna go over to the passenger side and I'm gonna do the same thing. The job is exactly the same, so I am not gonna record that. I've got the passenger side CV axle pulled. This one, I've got it covered in this bags so I don't damage it, but you can see this one actually has a lot longer of a shaft that comes out. We also have this shaft, because this is a differential right here, the front differential. So it's got this drive shaft coming this way. Before I remove this, I'm going to want to just put a mark right here and here, and then also right here and here. It might not matter, but sometimes it does with drive lines because they're balanced or whatever. Oh, look at that. It's been rubbing. I'll bend that out of the way while I'm in there. Let's get this drive shaft removed. It's an E12. I did go ahead and mark these with a tire pen on both sides, and it might not matter, but it also might. Sometimes it does. Oh yeah, look at that. This thing is gonna spin. One thing about this, the FCP Euro video, he puts his transmission in neutral so that he can rotate his engine. You do not need to do that. You can completely skip that step. I'm gonna find a screwdriver to stick in there so that it doesn't rotate. And there it is, comes right out. I'm gonna stop recording for a little bit. I've done everything that I want to do underneath for now. At this point in the repair process, go ahead and follow along with the FCP Euro video or any of the other videos where they do the non-all-wheel drive N20. I'm going to start recording again once I get to the part where I actually lift the engine and we're loosening the motor mount, because that's where it is unique to the all-wheel drive. So yeah, I'll pick up at that point. All right, so we're back to my video. At this point, if you're following along with the FCP Euro video, you should be about 30 minutes into part one. They took the valve cover off, they put the timing kit on, they pulled the harmonic balancer off. You can see on my car, so I did all of that. And then after doing that, I installed this thing here. You want to install this thing last because you don't want to be fighting this the entire time. So after you did all that and you've installed this, for the all-wheel drive, you have to pull the this engine mount on the driver's side. You got to pull it completely out, and it's easy to do. You have a nut right there, and then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts like that, and there's the E-style bolts. I forgot to mention, you're also going to have a bolt right here. For my car, it was holding on some hydraulic lines, so be mindful of that. And then there was also some electrical wires just clipped onto here. This thing, you can see how I have it mounted. It just goes there. And then for this, you actually have to thread in the tow connection into this part of the engine. You can see where I have that. One thing that's really dumb about this job, this is a different size than the one here. Your car is going to come with the one for the bumper. That's going to be a different size. And I have this because I'm a mechanic, but you might not have that. So that's just unfortunate. But then after this, you can put it all the way up to here, but I have it sitting on there and it's working out just fine. Now, after doing all of that, I'm ready to raise the car back up, and I'm going to go ahead and pull the differential. We got a bolt there, and then if you look up here, we got a bolt there, you can see it. And then there's a bolt up right there. Right there, you see it. I just finished removing that front differential. There was a lot that I didn't record because there was a lot of trial and error. I really struggled with this quite a bit. Those are the bolts right there. You can see one of them's extra long. The other 3 are the same long. You really don't need to keep track of what bolt goes where because it's super obvious. Obviously, if you stick the long bolt in the short bolt hole, it's just going to poke out really far, so it's not hard to keep track of that. I had to remove kind of a lot of stuff here. You can see this wide open area. So the other part to the engine mount, I had to pull that off as well. It sits right there. That one is right here. It's got the 3 E-Torx bolts there, and that nut had already been removed from before. So I got that out of the way. And then I got this thing out of the way as well. This was kind of a big deal. This has got the bolt right there, and it's got 2 more, I guess they're actually nuts, right there. That. You're missing it, sorry. Okay, right there. Okay, see where that nut goes in? I guess stud, and then the other 2 studs. You can see before when that was in there, it was just blocking all that way. Oh, I guess there was also it attached to that electrical connection holder right there. So as soon as I removed that, it just really widened out, opened this area, so that way I can actually fit it through. Another thing I did, you can see this subframe is hanging down. I disconnected the subframe bolts, 3 on this side and 3 on that side as well. It was these bolts right here. So 1, 2, 3. This is just a regular one. That's E-Torx. This is the E-Torx. And then these actually went to the rack and pinion. I don't know if that was necessary. So I'll show you where these went. So this is bolt 1, 2, 3. Bolt number 1 went right through there. Bolt number 2 now went right up through right up through there. Oh, that thing's in the way. Yeah, just right up there. And then bolt number 3 went right up through there, right there. See that? And it bolts to the subframe right there where it's missing. And that was the 3 bolts on that side. And then on the other side, I did the exact same 3 bolts as well. Let me walk you through that real fast. So I'm on the passenger side now. This was bolt number 1, bolt number 2 now, and then bolt number 3 was right there, right there. And then I did pull the rack and pinion bolts. There were 4 of them, 2 on each side. There was 1 here, so 1 there, 1 there, zips there, and there. And then the ones on the driver's side now, it was bolt right there, and then a bolt right there. Yeah, right, yep, right there. I'm going through the video editing. I discovered another issue. So one of my rack and pinion bolts actually went through here. And then there was these 2 other bolt holes right here, but only one of the other bolts went to one of the holes, and I don't remember which one it was. So when you're doing this, just be mindful and take a look at your rack and pinion and see which 2 of these 3 holes your car actually utilizes. And it's easy to tell. You literally just look at your rack and pinion and be like, okay, it's obviously going to be this one and this one, or something like that. I also have this thing here. I have the thing up top holding it that I showed you, but this thing just allows me to adjust it while I'm below. The idea behind this was I could raise the engine just a little bit, and it was minimal. I hardly did it at all. I could raise the engine up and get this engine a little bit out of the way just to give me a little bit more room. And then you can see I also had to pry this one down. So I got a pry bar and I pried this down. The differential itself, it tries to be right here, and like when you actually loosen the bolts out, it's still stuck, and you try to pull it this way and it just will never go. You actually have to push it all the way up there, and then you have to send it through up here now. And that's why you have to remove everything going on right there. Actually, it was just the one thing, which was nice. And once I did that, I could literally just, lift it up, send it through, pull it down, and it came right out. I did also remove the nut for that engine mount up there. So there was that, and I think that was helpful. Next step is going to be removing this. You can see I already removed one of the bolts. These are 13 millimeter, and you got 1, 2, and then 3, and then a 4th one on that higher side. Now that I've got that removed, it's pretty much the same as the regular non-all-wheel drive oil pan. It's just these E8s all along the pan. Just get all of these loosened up and removed. Disconnect whatever electrical connections are still remaining on your oil pan. For the electrical connection right here, you're going to want to follow this wire down and through the oil pan. It actually has several other clips that I forgot to mention, and it's the exact same clip as that. You literally just pry it right off and it's easy. Or like electrical clip holder thing, like I got this last one there holding it. And then what else do you got? You got these bolts here. These need to be removed. This part does need a little bit more clarification. So I'm talking about the bolts right here. So 1, 2, 3. You don't need to touch anything going on here. You could leave that completely alone. All of the other bolts that hold the oil pan on, they're pretty straightforward. Other than these 3, they're just kind of weird. These 3 bolts for the bell housing that I talked about earlier, it goes 1, 2, and then way up there, 3. You do have to get those bolts as well, because those do bolt to the oil pan. These ones are a little bit longer. This is like a middle length. It was the one right at the bell housing. By middle, I mean like it's the, so this is a super long, this is a middle, that's a short. I almost forgot to drain the engine oil. You obviously do not want to forget that. I got my oil drained, and then I stuck my drain bolt back in. I went ahead and I put my new copper washer on there, and I torqued it down. So this is all torqued up, and I recommend doing it that way. Now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and finish removing the oil pan. Forgot, I almost pulled the pan when it was completely full of oil. I literally have one more bolt left. That would have been bad. Some of these bell housing bolts go into the transmission. Yeah, you can see where my finger is. The transmission bell housing. Some of these bolts actually bolt into the oil pan. It looks like it's the bottom 3 bell housing bolts are going straight into the oil pan. So I'm going to remove those. They are E10s. I'm going to have to pry it just to break it loose. Those gaskets always stick. I was able to crack it loose. I want to see if I can record the process of getting the oil pan out. It's actually really hard. A lot of people struggle with this. All right, it's coming. That was way easier than it was supposed to be. At this point, I've got the oil pan removed. I recommend going to the FCP Euro video for the next couple of steps, just doing the timing and doing some work up there. I'm gonna pick this video back up once I'm actually reinstalling the oil pan and I'm reassembling the bottom end. I'm gonna show you like how to replace these seals and how to put this in the car and the torque specs on that. So I do still have a bit of stuff to show you. So come back to this video once you're reassembling the bottom end. Welcome back to the video. At this point, you should be about 33 minutes into the FCP Euro video part 2. You should have timed your engine completely. You've got all your parts in there, and you just put your tensioner on, your timing tensioner. At this point, we need to do the oil pan gasket again, or the oil pan, and obviously with all-wheel drive, so we're a little bit different. So let's get started with that. Let me clean up this area before I lift it up. We need to install this oil pan. First thing, I got to clean up this gasket surface, and then I got to clean up the surface on the engine, and that's pretty straightforward. And then I'll figure out the torque specs and the torque sequence for that, and I'll document that. Also, do not forget to throw this thing in and torque this down. That torque was 10 Newton meters. My oil pan comes on and off easier than yours probably is going to, and that's because I got this subframe already lowered, and that is making it a million times easier. Some people put zip ties through some of the holes on this oil pan just to hold the gasket in place, and that's a really good idea. I don't have any, so I'm not going to, but yeah, you probably do want to do that. I finally got it to go. The way I did it was I removed the 2 rubber things like this that sit right in between the bell housing and the oil pan. You'll see them, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Originally I wanted to leave them in because I don't like removing those if I don't have to, but I just took them out. It makes it a million times easier. At this point I can go ahead and start threading in my bolts. It's really easy to know what bolts go where because you see I got a shorter bolt and obviously a longer bolt goes here. If I try to stick it in, it doesn't do nothing. See that? It just bottoms out and doesn't hit thread. So it's not hard to keep that straight. You really don't need to worry about that. I got this torquing information for the oil pan. The small bolts, those are all 10 Newton meters. And then you've got some larger bolts going through the transmission. Those are 22 Newton meters. I couldn't find a torquing sequence, but all I did is I just torqued it in a crisscross pattern. And at first I bottomed them out. And then I torqued them all down to the half spec, 5 Newton meters. And then I torqued them all down to the full spec, the 10 Newton meters. And then obviously you got the larger bolts, those are 22 Newton meters. And with those larger bolts, as I was doing my sequence, I also bottomed out those ends and I did those to, 11 Newton meter spec. And then I torqued it down to the final 22 with the smaller bolts. I also have that drain plug there. That drain plug is 25 Newton meters, and you do need to replace that copper O-ring or copper gasket that they normally have. I just finished torquing down that oil pan. The rubber pieces I was talking about that I took out, they go right there, and they're little half moon shaped things. And the oil pan actually has like half moon shaped pieces of metal that poke out that literally slide right through those gaps, and that's why you have to take them out. I'm not going to reinstall mine because I don't really think it matters. You can reinstall yours if you want to, but I'm not going to. And then obviously we had these 3 bolts for the bell housing that I talked about earlier. It goes 1, 2, and then way up there, 3. You do have to get those bolts as well because those do bolt to the oil pan. Before installing my front differential, I went ahead and I plugged this in and I clipped the wires into the wire holder things. We got several of them. The first one is right there. The second one is right there now. Let's see, right there, you can see it. And then the third one, if you follow it, it goes right there. Right there. Fourth one goes, it actually clips to the oil pan gasket. It's kind of interesting. See that right there? And that's it. I'm changing the seals right here just because it came with it. And honestly, I probably could have left these old ones in, but oh well, I have these new parts. It came with 2 of these, the 10, 33, 48s. One of them goes to this, and then the other one goes to this thing right here. So I'll show you how I'm actually doing this. So I got this seal tool right here, and I have a friend helping me. You might need a friend as well, because this is actually kind of hard to remove. But basically, I'm like standing on this, and then I have this inside, and then he's like tapping it with a hammer like that. You do have to be careful to make sure you're not catching anything behind this, because you don't want to accidentally rip out more than the seal. Oh, and there it goes. See that? That was easy. Easy enough. So I got that removed. At this point, I'm just going to clean this up, and then I'm going to put the new one in. I'm going to tap it with a hammer, but I'll video that so that you can see how I'm doing it. So I'm hammering this in place. This seal has like a thing out there, like an edge. And so you got to be careful about that. I have this punch that has a really flat end, and it's could potentially be a good thing. This hammer could also be used, but you just got to be mindful to not damage the lip thing poking out. Before you take yours out, hopefully you have an idea of how flat yours were. And you obviously have this one you can look at. Yeah, it's literally just flush with the metal. There we go. Let me just get this a little bit more flush all around. There we go. Now let's do this one. Oh, this thing likes to fall out. This piece fell out of the seal. I just want to take it out of there so it doesn't get stuck inside of here and cause any issue. Finally. All right, now I'm going to wipe this clean. I'll get it all cleaned up in there with my rag, and then I'm going to throw the new one in. These boxes also came with these clips. These go for the CV axles. I'm not going to do that yet, but I will show you how to do these when I get to the CV axles. Unfortunately, the kit doesn't actually come with the O-rings for the differential and the piece over here, which is weird. They come with the other seal, but they don't come with the O-ring, so I guess I'm reusing them, unfortunately. Oh well, it is what it is. But at this point, I'm ready to reinstall this. Up here, I've got my surfaces all cleaned up. It's just the 4 bolts, as you can see there. They're 13 millimeters. It's pretty easy. So I'm going to go ahead and reinstall this, and then I'll reinstall the differential. Let's get this thing installed. You do got to be really careful when you're installing this. You don't want to pinch that O-ring and damage it and destroy it. So be mindful of that. It wouldn't be a terrible idea to dab some grease or oil on that O-ring if you feel like you want to. I'm not going to. Okay, there we go. Just wiggle it back and forth until it's all the way on. Then you can thread your bolts in there. I definitely wouldn't have the bolts drive in this part, because you can tear your gasket doing that. Just keep wiggling the thing back and forth and it'll slide through the O-ring. It'll be fine. All right. And you do have to hold this while you're threading this thing on, because it tries to pop off. So now that I've got my first screw in there, I can stop holding it, obviously. I'm putting in the front differential. This part is going to be a little bit tricky, just getting it inside. Oh my goodness. I might need to raise the engine up with my engine thing. Let me give that a shot. All right, going up just a tad bit on the engine, not a lot. Just enough. Okay, let's give that a shot. Come on. Okay, that worked. Okay.
It's so close to being there.
Come on. That was so hard. Let me show you what I went ahead and did. So you can see it's not bolted to anything, and this thing is like loose, but it will not come out. Trust me, that thing is such a pain. So just like when I took this thing out, you have to send it through here. You gotta send it through here. If you try to send it through here, which is what it looks like you need to do, it's just not gonna fit. There's no way possible. Raising the engine up, that made all the difference in the world. So, you know, I raised the engine up. I had just enough room to get it going through there, and I had to rotate it. I had to wiggle it. Finally, I could just go through, just, you know, I'd make progress, and finally it went all the way there. At this point, I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing lifted up and bolted to the oil pan. Just gotta lift it in there. Be careful to not damage the O-ring on the differential when you're sliding this into the oil pan. Oh, come on, get in there. Okay, got that there. Now that it's in, you really gotta hold this tight. You don't want that falling out. It's gonna destroy the gasket or the O-ring if you do that. Sweet, I got one in there, now it's holding it in place. The differential is all torqued down. The torque on those bolts was really high. It was 140 Newton meters. For a second, I was thinking that it was probably too high, but I torqued it down anyways, and all of them torqued down to the 140 Newton meter. And that's what the procedure says, and so I guess that's it. I also had a hard time getting my 1/2-inch torque wrench right here, getting this in there. Oh man, you can't even see it, because it was just kind of tight. So I actually had to lift up my engine even more. Luckily, I have that red thing over there where I can, you know, lift up on my engine. That has proven to be a very needed thing for this job. I am going to need to top off the gear oil for that front differential. I can't do that until I stick the CV axles in because it's just going to spill right out. But before I put my CV axles in, I'm going to go ahead and reassemble the subframe. So I'm going to put my bolts back in, and then I'm going to reattach the rack and pinion, and then put the bolts in over there. And then I'm going to do my CV axles. I almost forgot to put this piece on right here. It just has the 2 nuts there, and then the 1 nut there. And it goes to here. Oh man, yep, goes to there. And then that electrical piece goes in that hole right there. All right, now let's do the subframe. And I might need something to actually lift up on the subframe. All right, now time for the passenger side. Don't forget about the bolts for the, what do you call this thing, a rack and pinion? One of my rack and pinion bolts actually went through here, and then there was these 2 other bolt holes right here, but only one of the other bolts went to one of the holes, and I don't remember which one it was. So when you're doing this, just be mindful and take a look at your rack and pinion and see which 2 of these 3 holes your car actually utilizes. And it's easy to tell. You literally just look at your rack and pinion and be like, okay, it's obviously going to be this one and this one, or something like that. Remember these clips that came out of these boxes that go to the CV axles? So it's these clips right here, and this CV axle is brand new because I'm not reusing that bad one. So this clip is, you know, it's already brand new. I may or may not replace a clip for the other CV axles that I am reusing. I'll check it out and see if the clip needs to be replaced or if I could just reuse it, but Yeah, that's what that is. Putting the CV axle in is not super hard. Obviously, if you took them out, you pretty much know how to put them back in. You just shove them through that hole there. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to put the CV axle in on the driver's side and the passenger, and then we'll go from there. I got the CV axle in. I got all the nuts in place. I just need to torque everything down. And then I'll tell you how to do the bolt right there. There's a little bit of a trick to it, and there are some torque specs, a little bit of technicality. So I'll walk you through that in a little bit. I'm doing the front CV axles now. I'm just torquing these bolts down. Let me show you something with this. So these are the bolts right here. See how it's got that spring and it does like a helicoil? This part is a larger diameter than the bottom part of the spring. You can also see that black seal there, and that's the order of how it goes. See that? And you stick these just straight in like that, and you just thread them in. The torque spec on this is pretty high. It's 210 Newton meters plus an additional 90 degrees. And it's an Allen head. Let me see what size. 17 millimeter Allen, so pretty large. Yep, 17 millimeter. What I did here, I stuck a punch through here. You can also do it with a screwdriver. Let's see. So you can get a screwdriver. This is a snap-on one, so I don't want to break it. But you can stick it in the rotor part. And then when you rotate the bolt, it'll like lock it in place. And it'll hold it in place for you. So yeah. That's an easy way to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to torque this bolt down, and then I'm going to go over to the passenger side and I'm going to torque that bolt down as well. Two 210 Newton meter, got that. My torque wrench isn't even strong enough to do the torque angle at that magnitude, so I'm gonna just mark this, and then let's do 90 degree. All right, pretty close. Oh man, tries to turn. That's so annoying. The steering wheel keeps turning on me. I hate that. Holy cow. I guess my holder thing didn't do so well. Shot out of the rotor. I forgot to show this in the video. Don't forget to tighten up the bolts for your lower control arm, specifically the bolts going to the body. Obviously you saw me tighten up the bolts that go to the steering knuckle, but I forgot to show that bolt that goes to the body that I did loosen. I'm going to go ahead and top off the front differential with some gear oil. I don't have the engine mount installed yet, and you could argue that the engine is, up a little bit higher, and so this might hold a little bit more oil, and that may or may not be true. It'll be fine though, it's minimal. I'm going to go ahead and do that right now, and the only reason why is because this is the tool that I'm working with, and it's not super compact. If you had one that was like a super long Allen, or like the skinny part poked out a lot further, you could easily fit it in there with the engine mount on, but I just don't have that tool, so that's why I'm doing it. That's why I'm adding the gear oil before installing the engine mount. This size is a 14 millimeter Allen, I believe. I got the differential plug removed. You got to be mindful about that O-ring. It sometimes tries to stay, and obviously I'm either going to replace this or I'm going to clean that spotless. Unfortunately, the kit didn't come with that O-ring, so that's unfortunate. In order to top off the front differential, I've got this tool right here, this large syringe, and then I got my gear oil, obviously. I'm just going to spill the gear oil into the syringe, and then I'm going to send it through and shoot it into there. And you just fill it until it starts to drip, and you'll see it on my video. It dripped a little bit. That was because I filled it too fast. It still needs to take more fluid. All right, that might be it. Let's add a little more. Nope, that's not it. I think that's it right there. Let me just add some. Yeah, that's it. That is it. Okay, let's torque this down. I do have that torque spec. You do want to get that torqued properly. I'm going to go ahead and torque down the differential drain bolt. They say you're supposed to replace them. It's probably because of the O-ring. I'm reusing mine. The torque spec is 60 Newton meters. I really should have had a thing ready for, to catch that oil that spilled everywhere. Gear oil is the worst, and I just didn't think about it, but we're just about done with the all-wheel drive portion of this job. I'm going to go ahead and install that one now, the drive shaft. It's just up there like how it used to be. I'll get a screwdriver or something like that and stick it in there so that way it stays in place so I can torque these down. Same thing on that side. I need to do the engine mount still. I'll do that when I do it. And then I got a little bit of stuff up top. I guess I got the engine mount up top that I gotta do. And then after that, it'll be on to that FCP Euro video to do the upper part of the engine and install the valve cover and the rest of all of that. Yeah, we're almost done with the all-wheel drive aspect of it. I'm installing the engine mount. I went ahead and I put it into position from underneath because, you have a lot more room underneath. But the bolts were a little bit tight to get to, so I actually am getting them from up top. You can see I got my long extensions, and I have wobbly extensions, which is really nice. And yeah, you can fit it down there. After I do that, I just need to install this one now. Just install this, and then I can put my bolt onto my nut onto the engine mount right there. And then I can lower this. And once I do that, then we are back onto that FCP Euro video. So we're just about done here. There is a transmission cooler line that bolts to the engine mount right there. I almost forgot about it. So yeah, you don't want to forget that. It bolts right where my finger's at. Yeah, you see it right there. At this point, my video is done. I've shown you everything I've wanted to show you on this for the all-wheel drive portion of this car. You should be 44 minutes into the FCP Euro video part 2. So go to that video, go to that timestamp, and just finish out the job. You'll have everything you need to know. Good luck.